Hi, darling.
Oh, Lord.
You're recording already? Hold on.
Oh, I just shared a nude today.
You-
Yeah, I'm just doing it. I'm just going to say like, fuck it.
Well, like I saw the one from your modeling days with your wow across the boobies.
Yeah, I just showed it without the wow.
There's so much that to be said about how we're taught to be ashamed of our bodies.
I know. And I shared another one too. I shared it. And I'm like, by the way, I have the original of this one that's even cooler looking. Because it was like, oh my God, my profile picture now is one with a big old black eye. You know what I mean? And I did that for a reason with the makeup artist to show, that I'd been through hell. And also I had the boxing gloves. So I'm being very respectful for domestic violence. I don't want to I'm not making fun at all. I'm making a statement.
Yeah.
But I could show that and I could show myself beat up. But you can't show a gorgeous nude taken by a famous photographer. And one was in Paris and the other one was Italy.
Well, I mean, you can, but it's just like open to all this judgment and interpretation by other people.
Oh, no, you can't. You'll get shut down.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, there's ways to get around that.
I don't care about the judgment. I'm over that. I literally am like, I don't give a fuck. Because I was having this great conversation with this woman from the Women's Resource Center here in town. Mm-hmm. And she was saying, God, I really wish I could have talked right now. I wish I could talk to the 22-year-old me. And I was like, girl, I'm like the 80-year-old me telling the 50-year-old me, get out there and do it. Take your damn clothes off. Show it all. Do it. Dance.
I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, what am I going to, the worst thing, the only person I actually really care about is my kid. And my kid, if she sees these, I can tell you right now, she'd be like, you should stand different. It's not at all going to be like, oh my God, Mom, I can't believe you did that. It's going to be like, can we change the lighting?
She's a director already. Yes, we know she's a director. She's your kid. There's no doubt like, she's your kid.
I need to change the outfit. Oh God, isn't it crazy?
It is. Yeah, there's so much crazy, and it's all overlapped with a ton of things that are not ours that we didn't create, but we got to deal with them.
Hey,
I'm double chinning it.
Oh God, and then me too, in the neck and the thing and here. I actually literally was at dinner last time I was in LA, just random. And I had someone in LA tell me, they're like, you could easily get just a little staple right behind your ear and take this up. And I'm like, check, please. Get the fuck out of here.
You could easily just get like a staple right here.
You can easily get a staple right here. Oh God. So, okay. So you are the one I wanted to talk to. I literally, my phone was blowing up and I was like, mother of hell, you should have heard the rattling off of the curse words I said. And I'm like, I got to call Sarah.
All right.
Because whatever you say about this, I'm like, yeah, what she said. What she said.
Give me the story. Tell me what's going on.
So I'm saying this. I'm sorry I'm going to walk this guy off the plank, but I'm going to do it. Sorry about you, buddy. But I am on Tinder, right? I'm on almost all of them. I'm not on OkCupid because I don't genuinely want a boyfriend right now. Like I was just meeting and interviewing, and also like I'm no dummy. I'm available. I have a pretty good profile that like, but if it's my boyfriend, you got to be freaking smart and actually read what I did and go see all my movies and hit me up and be like, yo, I need to feed you. I'm like, yes, you do. So side note, I'm on all these sites. I'm interviewing people for stirring up trouble, but I'm also genuinely meeting humans. Like I met Jesus on there, and I'm friends with Jesus now forever. And I'm like, I love me some Jesus. He literally looks like Jesus. He's got anyway, Jesus has become a good friend of mine from Tinder. That's the quote.
I think there's a song about that.
That's hilarious. But that said, I'm actually meeting people genuinely. I have actually met, like people, and I've met people.
Mhm.
This particular human, male survivor, I travel all the time, right? And he was like, "Oh my God, I'm in yada yada city. Would you mind if I, can I feed you?" I was like, "I will always take a meal for the most part, not with creepy weirdos." But um, I really haven't met, honestly, like a whole bunch of literally creepy weirdos, because there's like an energetic level already with me, don't do that, because I'll
Yes.
kill. You know what I mean? So it's already pretty much, I don't have to worry about that. So I literally went to lunch with this human traveling by. I am myself. What you see is what you get. There's no, like, I'm like, "Oh my God, I heard your story and I heard about the wife and the whole," I'm like, "Oh my God." Like, I hear them so often, and I get it that not every story is the same,
Mhm.
but they all have similarities. And, I'm very available on text and email. I mean, when you're in my email list, you can respond to me. It's me who responds. But that does not mean that I am available.
Right.
And so he like fell in love with me
Oh gosh. Yeah.
and starts sending me all this stuff. And I just said, "Okay, well, boundaries, I'm not into that." I'm very kind, right? And then you do that to me at like 5 in the morning, and I got a whole long truck and start like, "Don't you need to be loved? I watched your documentary. I want to hold you." And I'm like, I'm just not into that.
Yeah.
But you're like projecting a bunch on me,
Yep.
right? And
Yes.
so, and then it becomes, they get mad. You just watch a whole, like, they just had a whole relationship and a whole conversation and a whole projection with themselves. Dude,
Yes.
all I did is, I'm available to talk about healing, and you can always feed me. The end. You know. And then finally I got a little harsh. I was like, "Dude, like, I'm not actually available, especially not sexually." And he's like, "But, like," went into this whole thing, like, "Our bodies need love and all this shit." And I was like, "Listen, if you saw the guy that I am fucking, you'd be like, oh, yeah, no, I'm not out of your league, pal." Like, I'm like, not to be an asshole, but sorry, I'm not interested. And also, I
Right.
don't give a fuck. I don't want a dude. Like, the whole idea of, like, just because you're a guy and you're interested in me and you want to be there, I'm like, "No, I don't care about that at all."
Right. Yes. So yes.
Like, at
I'm
all.
totally
And
hearing what
finally
you're
I was mean, and I was like, "Dude, I fuck a guy in his 20s. Go fuck yourself. Like, seriously, like, dude, you need to stop." And then it turned like, "Oh, I guess that was just an interview. I guess," it was like the whole
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
psychological, like,
The
you're
pity
circling the
party.
drain,
Yeah.
dude, you know?
Yeah.
And thinks that every single thing I'm saying online is directly to him. And you're like, "Dude, I have, my Tinder is 9,999 plus." Like, there's no, it doesn't
Yeah.
go,
No,
it doesn't,
it just
it
shifted, but
doesn't
I
go.
hear what you're saying. You're maxed out on Tinder, you have lots of options, and this guy's apparently got himself convinced that he is the one that you've been waiting for, and that is just demonstrably untrue, and you're trying to say, "Hey, yeah, no, this isn't it." Yep, been
Well, the
there.
reason I wanted you on, because I want you to, like, go off, is you and I did a quick little live the other
Yeah,
day. And I was just on my way to drop off my broken laptop. I was just literally jumping on and saying, like, "all this stuff is happening, blah, blah, blah." And you were on there. And then another kid who's the same, by the way, has this whole, like, "Can I snap you? I love these women," which is adorable and cute, but I'm not actually available, you know? And he started on the live, like, "Can't you be my girlfriend? I want to bring you home to my mom," that kind of stuff. And I mentioned that because you were like, "Really? You're just completely taken away from, like, a healing conversation by bringing it to, like, what kind of panties do you have on?"
yes, exactly.
So my question to you, Sarah, usually, like, people are calling me like, "Hey, can you help me?" I'm like, "I need help." Of just like putting this into your beautiful diatribe of, like, your
Well,
way
it's
of
just
speaking. Like,
you
what
have
the
to be
fuck?
willing
Like,
to say. This
how
isn't
can
about
you
you. Yeah.
how can you be exactly free, open female? I'm gonna start talking more about sex. I just shared a nude today of myself. That's not an invite. That's actually for the women. I did that 100% for my lady friends. That's who
Yeah.
that's for.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, so yeah, my question is, how do you be kind and also not a fucking cunt? Because I want to be like, dude.
Yeah. 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 So like what
And
you said before, it's about boundaries. And when it comes to boundaries, clear is kind. So it's not about being nice, it's about being clear. Kindness to me is not so much about telling people what they want to hear. It's about telling people what they need to hear. And so when you're putting all this stuff out there, if they can't hear it, that's not the problem. The fact that you said it is all you have control over, not what they take from it. But you're describing a couple different phenomena here that I am like familiar with.
I know.
So the
Go.
first thing is parasocial relationships. When you are a public figure, people think you're talking just to them when they are so desperate for connection that they have to connect with something that is larger than life, and you have a personality and a persona and you're out here in the world in ways
True.
that a lot of people are not out here. And yes, I understand there's levels to that, but I mean, you ask any celebrity what kind of cuckoo stuff they get from fans, and there's always going to be some that feel like they have this direct connection with somebody that they don't actually even know.
Right.
And so yeah, it's called parasocial relationships. People can look that up if they want to.
Whoa.
But a great many public figures have talked about this and how scary it can get when folks decide that it is something other than what it actually is, even if
Mm.
they've never met the person. Now, when you add a layer, like you're talking about with having lunch with somebody,
Right.
now they've decided that there's evidence that it is more than just they are a fan of yours.
Right.
You are now actually someone in their life. And so it
Right.
reinforces the idea to them that this is special and that they have something with you that no one else has, and
Lunch.
lunch and a conversation. But also, like you said, he's a male survivor. So he feels like there's this even deeper connection because the two of you have shared an experience that he may
True.
be unaware is as common as it is.
True.
Okay. And he may not have felt safe telling anyone about his own experience in the past. And so having told you, now he feels like there's an even more specific
True.
and special bond.
By the way, he's not the only one. There are hundreds
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I've actually sat with and talked to, and literally hundreds of
Well,
men.
as you and I both know, sex abuse of children, all kinds of types of violations of our innocence as kids, it's really common, but not that many people talk about it publicly. So you're putting yourself on a level and a pedestal for people, right? Which, yeah, and you're like, I don't want that, and we need to be talking about it.
Well,
So,
also, and I've said like years and years ago, it was going amazing, and I had a whole group of people that it was getting a little too culty.
mhm.
And I was like, don't put me on a pedestal. Don't put anyone on a pedestal, because please believe me, I've met all those celebrities. And then once you actually meet people, like, don't put people on a pedestal. Because we
Exactly.
all
It's like
have gaps.
Michelle Obama said, well, like you get in the room with people who everybody says are so great, and you realize, yeah, they're not that smart. They're not that great.
They're dumb as shit.
But that's like, I'm talking like the book I just read. I told you about Mediocre. Didn't I tell you about that?
Yes.
Jomo Olowu. She's amazing. But people read Mediocre because this has a lot to do with where the privileged kind of sense that some folks have about their power in society and about what they're entitled to is really driven by lots and lots of things. But when it comes down to individual interactions, you can see them playing out. So between parasocial relationships and male entitlement and just the level of disconnection people feel in general, I think is leading to some really unhealthy behavior around what it means to be connected. So what I would say though, again, is boundaries. So when you put the stuff out that you put out, maybe we want to develop a disclaimer of some sort that says, here
Not
is
for
the
you.
reason I'm doing this. And I will not accept or respond to comments related to, the objectification of my body, your desire to own or touch or possess me in any way. Like, I will not respond to those things. Like, if you put it out there from the beginning and then someone does it, then you can say, please see the disclaimer above, or
Right.
just like get them off your feet. Like the bottom line is with what you're doing and social media and other things, like people can comment all day long. If they feel entitled to a response from you and you've made it clear, I will not respond to these things, then at least you're being clear. At least they can't say, well, obviously she wants XYZ from this, because again, it goes to
Right.
they're projecting a whole story and they're telling themselves she must want XYZ from this. Now, typically what I hear when people say, don't you want X, is what I hear is, I want X.
Right.
Right. People don't see the world as it is. They see the world as they are and project everything onto others that they want, that they feel, that they think. And so I think the way to be compassionate, but also very boundaried about it, is to say, I hear that you are saying you want these things. Let me be clear that I do not want those things. And it's totally okay for you to want it. It is not okay for you to project it onto me.
Okay. Because you know me, because who we're sharing this video with, you're like, they know me. This is what I actually said.
What did you actually say?
It was like, and I just go, question mark, what in the absolute fuck are you talking about? Sounds like a bunch of projection. It looks to me like you've created a whole story in your head.
Yep.
Now, and the thing is, it's like, I am kind, I'm giving, I'm not going to change that. And so you could like put a fortress around, you could put the assistants in front of everybody, and you could put in like, you can't talk to her, you can't not, like, I'm going to shut down, because he could be actually crazy. That's the thing. Like, you could, which he's not, I really don't think so at all. But that's the point. Like, people don't do this because you get scared of like sharing, especially, okay, I just shared a nude and I'm going to start sharing pricked. Oh God, when I start talking about a sexual education, you're correct. I'm going to need disclaimer, not available. Do not touch. I actually have a big patch being put on my jacket that says, do not touch, do not pet. Do not pet.
Do not pet. I like that.
Not invited, right? I don't like that at all. But I don't want to shut down.
Right.
There's
I mean, there's a way, like I said, there's a way to be clear and kind without, I mean, and again, some folks are just going to ignore boundaries, but that doesn't mean you can't hold yours. And when it comes to like the response to him, like it was just to him, right? Then none of that was public, right? Okay. The other thing to be aware of is that the line between going from kind of unhealthy attachment to malicious intent is a fine one, right? So,
I know.
And it typically has to do with humiliation. So the key thing is that this individual cannot feel like he's being singled out for humiliation.
Yeah, that's not my intention at all.
But yeah, no, of course it's not your intention at all. And I
would never. But when I say, what in the actual fuck are you talking about?
Well, I mean, and that sometimes that will sometimes shock somebody into like, whoa, what am I doing? And sometimes they'll double down and dig in, but you don't have any control over what he chooses to do. My suggestion would be block, because ultimately you don't need to be wasting your energy on a lot of back and forth with someone who needs more professional assistance than whatever a dialogue with you is going to bring him. But he has a whole story in his head. But just like
100%. But this has happened to me with women too.
Yeah, of course.
And it's like, it can be sexual. It could be like single white female thing. And I'm like,
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing about obsession, people get obsessed with the thing that either they aspire to be, or the thing that is just so rare in their worlds that they feel like they want to be with it all the time. Like, I mean, I'll tell a story. Okay, so when I was young and falling in love with my ex-husband, I used to sit outside of his house in my car and just like watch him. Is that crazy? Or is that someone who is
You're
having a
like,
lot of difficulty with healthy attachment, just wanting to be close to someone they feel connected with, you know? But that was like, he thought it was crazy, and he still married me. But I mean, here's my point. I was 19 years old when we met.
oh,
And
yeah.
I had been kicked out of my house and was living in my car and had had all these dramas and traumas. And I didn't even know. I mean, at the time, I wasn't even identifying myself as a survivor. I didn't know the degree to which I had been abused as a
Holy
little
cow.
kid.
And
And
you're like,
so,
kindness. Oh my God.
yeah, somebody's interested in me. And honestly, it wasn't even that he was that kind. I'll tell you another story. The first time I actually had any kind of dialogue with my ex-husband, I was 19. We were at Perkins, which is like a little restaurant here that was open 24 hours back in the day, where you could smoke, drink coffee all night. And of course, that's what we did. But I was with a friend who knew him and his brother. They were in another booth. She was like waving over to his brother and stuff. And he called us over to sit down. I got kind of seated next to my ex-husband. Of course, this is the first time we actually talked to each other. I'd seen him because I worked at the pool hall where he came in to shoot pool. Anyway, long story short, I sit down. He looks at me, he goes, "Oh, so I guess I'm the one that gets the blowjob." That was his first words to me. And I looked him straight in the eye and very calmly said, "I have no such aspirations." And that's why he liked me, because I didn't go, ah, like freak out like a little girl because he said blowjob in my presence. I was in my power and I said, "I have no such aspirations." And he's like, he told me
You
later,
got married.
like, well, a long time after that, but he told me later the reason he asked me out after that was because he felt like I was intelligent and I had confidence and I wasn't just gonna like fawn all over him. But then turned out he actually wanted me to fawn all over him for the rest of our relationship. But like, you know what I mean? Like if I had been aware at that point of the stuff I had actually survived and the ways in which I felt like the only value I had to a guy was being a provider of blowjobs, that his saying that would have been like the red flag to not continue engaging. You know what I mean? But I
Yeah.
didn't know. Instead, I got super freaking attached.
Mm.
And I was telling myself a story too. Like, this is the guy that will be my equal, this that can match with me. But no, he never wanted to be equals. He never wanted to match. But that's the point I'm trying to make, is that even me, and I can sit here at 50 and talk about how 49, but whatever, I round up. I'm in my 50th year of life.
Yeah. Same.
And I feel like I've lived a lot of lives in my 50 years. So
Oh
I'm
yeah.
saying, like, if I could delude myself in all of the ways that I did about what it meant to have this connection with this person who, in all fairness, was just a continuation of a pattern that I had learned in my youth from people who were not prepared to be parents, you know, um, and then continued into my adult life, married the guy, had a kid with the guy, kept convincing myself. The story I was telling myself was, I can change him by loving him enough. Right?
Don't we all feel that way?
Right. And so I think like what you're talking about, it's like a slightly different story that he's telling himself. He's thinking, if you could love him enough to fix him,
Or well,
or
they could live, if they could love me enough, it could help me. And because they're all projecting as if I'm the girl in the movie,
right,
in the
right.
documentary, or the young girl like talking, and I'm
Well,
like,
even that, I mean, I watched the movie very differently, and I see an empowered person who, yeah, you're was surprised and discovering a lot of things along the way that maybe hadn't been very clear to you, but you were the agent of your own choices in that whole scenario. Where I think men do have, like, they have the damsel in distress archetype of women, they have the Madonna
play that.
and the horror, and then all of the
Oh, I
little
could play that too.
iterations in between. They want, yeah. But I mean, like, bottom line is he's telling a story. He's got himself convinced that there's some kind of magical connection that does not exist anywhere else in his world or yours. And that's, it's the undeniable, it's the inevitable. And that's a dangerous place to be in your own
Mm.
head.
Mm.
which isn't to say that, I mean, a lot of people end up doing exactly like what I did, is form an unhealthy attachment, obsess, stalk, do all of that stuff, and it works out. And then it reinforces the idea. I mean, it works. When I say works out, in that, yeah, I married the man. I had a kid with him. We lived together for 20 years. And ultimately, it was not a healthy relationship.
Oh my God.
I try to teach teenagers about healthy relationships. I'm like, I tell them all the time, beware of the story you're telling about what this
Oh,
is.
to yourself and others.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like, be aware, start to think through, what is it that you actually think is happening here? And is there evidence in the person's behavior that they are the thing you think they are, or the rescuer?
Well,
Because in many cases, if you're looking for rescue, that person's going to fall off the pedestal at some point. And then,
oh yeah.
yeah,
That's right. Don't put people on pedestals. We all have gas.
we can't help it though, because like we
It's
are
funny. Come on.
especially when you come from abuse. If you come from abuse and all you know is that love equals pain, then yikes, exactly. Then how do you form healthy attachment at all?
Or like, this is our conversation. Sarah and Angela talk about men.
Exactly. We're not really talking about that. We're talking about ourselves, and we're talking about relationships and how people get into these places.
Well,
because
what's amazing is this guy who's like super into me, and I get these like, by the way, he's not the only one.
I know.
Like these long, so I'm not like totally walking him down the plank, because there's quite a few of them that they send these long, you're amazing, you're like talented, you're beautiful, like it's amazing. Like, ladies, you should read that. It's true. All of those things are true. I am talented. I am beautiful. Oh, we should see this nude of me. It's pretty hot. But that doesn't mean that because that guy wants a relationship with me that I'm going to go, because I married a guy because of that.
Yeah.
I didn't even like him.
Yeah.
And it's like when you're so young and you come from abuse and you get like some dude who's like, I see you, I want you. Like the guy on the live the other day, like, I love you. What's your paint? What kind of panties you have on or whatever?
Right.
It's like, just because you want me does not mean I want you. But that takes a minute.
It does. And it's the twisted logic and the understanding that in many cases, I mean, a lot of folks are running around really, and we're very insecure in general. And we live in a culture that makes us more and more insecure. Every commercial's telling us we're not good enough. Every experience we have is about comparison. Yeah. Staple those, staple it back. Again, like people, all you need to do is staple this shut. But I mean, I was listening before we talked about imposter syndrome, imposter whatever. I hate the freaking whole concept of it, because it just doesn't even, the whole imposter thing, which is coming up a lot in academia and whatever. And I work in education, so I read all these articles, but I'm like, these two women wrote a great article and said, stop calling it imposter syndrome. This is not imposter syndrome. When someone says, I don't belong in this space because this space is harmful, that's not them feeling like an imposter. That's them recognizing that's not what they're supposed to be. So like, okay,
what's the imposter?
Have you heard about this though? Like, especially Black women in academia, really doubting whether they belong there because there's a lot of.
Anybody see Hidden Figures?
I know, right? Well, it's a competitive environment. It's designed to compare. It's designed to put people up and down on this whole like hierarchy of importance in the fields that they're studying or whatever. But like, women were excluded for so long, and obviously Black and brown people especially have had difficulty. Like, I work in a college access program, so I'm helping people get into college, but that are specifically in those groups that have traditionally been left out. But it's like, then once they get there, a lot of times what they're realizing is, this isn't really what I want to do. Like, I don't really want to be in an environment that's perpetuating this cycle of competitive ranking, trying to be crawling all over each other's backs to get to the top, right? And I think that's what's really happening in most cases, is people get in there and they say, oh, I'm finally here in this place that I've been told I should always want to be. And somehow it doesn't feel good. It's not because they are feeling like imposters. It's because it's a shitty situation to be in. And they're
Right, right.
recognizing
Oh,
it.
I see. You're feeling like you're an imposter.
Right. You're saying,
you're
maybe I don't belong here. It's not
right,
because you're
right,
not
right.
good enough. It's because your talent could be used to actually create a culture in which we're not doing that
Right.
to ourselves. Anyway, the bottom line is that there's going to be this tension, but I think that the way this relates, and it might feel like a weird tangent, is that when it comes to relationships, we're taught a lot of things over the course of our lives about what it's supposed to be like, who we're supposed to be with, what it's supposed to do to us when we're with the person that we're supposed to be with. And this isn't just men and women, because I've heard about it in a lot of the, folks that I know that are in same-sex relationships or that are in a gender spectrum that doesn't align purely with male female. Like if you're non-binary or queer, if you're having like, if there's people that identify as pansexual, like, so it's not even just about the gender archetypes, it's about these illusions that we have about love that are not ours. We didn't invent them. We have been taught them from the day we're born. Fairy tales, movies, all of the other things. And even if those stories are starting to be like cast with people who are not the traditional male female archetypes, the story is the same. The archetypes of the characters still end up being the same. You just put a non-binary person in the role, they're still going to carry out the same story, which is that somehow we are incomplete until we are with someone else
Right.
who makes us whole, who heals our wounds, who brings out the best in us and sees us for who we are. All of that is just mythology.
You know who that
And
is?
mhm,
Big old God is what that is.
right, exactly. Well, or what I mean, God or
Insert word.
insert word, the
It's
universe,
like
something
the
larger
infinite
than
universe
ourselves.
got
But
like,
it's
yeah,
supposed to be right, transcendent.
yeah.
Love is supposed to be transcendent.
That is
Transcends
pricked,
all of
by
the
the way.
past, every past hurt, all of our pain is just going to magically be wiped away through this
One
perfect.
person. Yeah,
And
no.
then people, get completely obsessed with the perfect wedding, the perfect baby shower, the perfect whatever. And then you have all of these folks coming at you with expectations around it. And then your day to day may be usually is completely
Boring.
so opposite to that you're like,
Right.
I'm failing at this thing I'm supposed to be great at. No, we're just lied to. Like, start interrogating the lies we're told. And then
Yeah,
you might
go.
find yourself in a more realistic place.
And when you go and have your own room, I mean, let's go back to like a room of one's own for real. And we have a connection, which is totally pricked. Pricked is a re-education of sex abuse survivors. Where you
Can't wait.
go
I cannot wait.
where you go have a Kundalini awakening and go have an orgasm with God, which I have done. And it's and I will literally take you through one. And I mean, obviously, I can't promise anything. I can give some tips, but but when you get to that place where you're completely okay and taken care of infinitely, like literally infinitely, then all the other attachments and stuff is just old. Like you said, it's just programming. You have the core balance, which puts you in a totally different place, at least for my experience, of giving a fuck. Like, granted, I have, full disclosure, I'll tell you privately, but I have one that I'm very much into, and he's texting me right now, and I could be like, huh?
Yeah, of course he is.
It's like,
I mean, and this is the thing. Yeah, I mean, it's not one or the other, but it's about both, and it's about recognizing that, yeah, your relationship to whatever love looks like has been shaped, and just starting to ask good questions about how has this been shaped? How is it playing out? Like I said, I'm in my 50th year, and I just kind of realized this year that most of the men I've dated, though they may have a lot of differences on the surface, like since my marriage ended, I've dated a bunch of guys, and all of them look completely different. But what I recognized was this pattern that I had of picking a guy that was not going to be available to be a partner to me, period. Like, they would not be capable of it. But I didn't recognize that. All I was recognizing is, well, they're not like the last one. They're not like the ex-husband.
Right.
But who they actually all have a lot in common with, when I'm being truly honest with myself, is my dad.
Dad. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where, I mean, I hate that Freud always comes up with the prayer and stuff, but like Freud was not lying when he said women were having all of this, complicated dynamic with their dads. What he did lie about was that they actually were getting fucked by their fathers.
Right. It's like he left the incest part out.
He left the incest part out and said women are fantasizing about their dads. Well, no, there has been a pervasive generational, for like going back thousands of years, abuse of girls and women and young boys too, of course. Like anyone with less power is an object to be used. And for us to deny that this has been an ongoing thing within human civilization since the dawn of it is completely ridiculous. It is not in our heads.
No.
We have been abused. We have been exploited. We have been used. All of that is true. And
yes, and it's like improv.
We internalize it. And we start to think to ourselves, yeah, maybe my most useful feature is that I can be useful to someone else, that my body can be at their disposal and at their pleasure, and that I should get pleasure out of that. Well, the reality is that if we are in that headspace of the value that I hold is in having a body someone else wants to use for pleasure, it denies us our actual power in being fully in our bodies. So embodied power, it's like what you're talking about, the Kundalini yoga experience and having an orgasm fully through your own mindfulness of your own body.
Totally different kind of orgasm. P.S.
Right, of course it is, but like what it is, it's
like an
reclaiming
epileptic
pleasure.
fit.
It's saying my pleasure is mine. This body is mine. And if I choose to invite someone to enjoy my body with me, that is a privilege. That is something that should be considered very carefully. It's not about being prudish. It's about saying, because I love sex and I'm good at it. So when I have sex with a guy and it's great, I'm thinking to myself, was that him or me? Because the reality is, most of the time, if a woman is embodied in her pleasure and knows how to get off, she's going to get off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't need the guy so much, which actually makes them feel really insecure.
Yeah. Well, side note, and I want to show you a picture of what you just were talking about, because I was like, ooh, but side note, the best I've had has no goal of orgasm. It's not about getting off at all. It's literally a freaking all night journey.
Yeah, and there's something to be said for that too. Although I ain't got that kind of time.
I love that response. Who has the time?
I got a lot of stuff to do. I need my sleep. No, I mean, and I think we do have a problem with sex being about a race to orgasm, which it shouldn't be. Like, there shouldn't be a race to orgasm. It shouldn't be like just trying to get there. What I have actually, I think, developed over the course of time is a whole like spectrum of pleasure in sex that I find really, it's like a whole range of things.
Learning all, which brings me to this, when you said about the whole men thing, right? And wanting men. Okay, so if this was, I did an amazing workshop, which I think you should do it. We should do it together. I should just share that guy, Xavier, on Instagram. Yeah. I took his shadow workshop, and he said something so like it went into my brain. I was like, oh my God, so genius. So like, if you have the dark side, right? He calls that little bubble, the light side within the dark, your golden shadow. Yeah. And that's what, and he's like, he made a comment that literally, it felt like an anvil fell from the sky and hit me on the head, and I fell over. He goes, many times in relationships, sometimes when you're exactly what you're saying, you're attached to daddy or whatever, the old trigger, you can be in love with somebody's golden shadow, their potential that they themselves haven't married yet. Yep. And that 100%, like, I'm like, I can see your potential. I could help you. I could change your life. You know,
the other thing is, we're healers, right? And healed people heal people. And so we recognize right away who's hurting and who needs healing. And we want to be there in some way to encourage their healing. Your whole body of work is around giving people tools for healing, right?
And
When it comes down to individual relationship though, when somebody wants to be your pet project and you're like, well, no, here's all the tools I've created and
yeah,
you
yeah,
feel
no, I
free to
don't.
like
No.
utilize those. You don't need to possess me to possess the tools for healing. But he is meshed those things together in such a way. Like,
Yeah.
and
You're
a
like,
lot of these, the men and women who you've had experiences with, and probably some non-binary and some genderqueer people too.
true.
Um, because we are all we're seeking belonging and connection. And when we feel seen and heard by somebody, even if it wasn't direct, we start to make a direct relation. I mean, I reached out to you because your film changed my life. It could easily, if I weren't as self-aware as I was or am or whatever. I mean, I'm still working on the self-awareness piece, but again, that goes to examining why. Ask why all the time. But if I had not, well, if I hadn't reached out to you, we wouldn't be connected. But if I had reached out in a creepy way, like if I had reached out and said, your film changed my life and we are meant to be best friends and you are meant to be like my guru and my teacher, I'm going to sit directly at your feet and learn from you. I don't think you would have said, hey, give me a call right now.
Well, that'd
Right.
have been $999.
Like, yeah, figure out how to monetize this
Yeah,
obsession.
I'm like, hold on a second. Well, here's the thing though. As you know, because now you're like, know me, just like Rhonda Dean. Rhonda Dean did the same thing. She booked me on a speaking engagement and was all about like, oh my God, Angela Shelton, Angela Shelton. She picked me up from the airport and she was literally like, Angela Shelton. And I started yelling out, Rhonda Dean! Oh my God, I'm with Rhonda Dean.
I
And
love that so much.
that's why I always yell it out. I'm like, I'm with Rhonda Dean, because it goes back to like the teacher teaches themselves. I'm learning just as much. I am going to show up at your house. I'm literally like, I am like God, it's like back in the day, I would have been Jack Kerouac, like on the road, like I'm just with the people. Like I'm genuinely coming over for dinner. And then a bonus, I'm Safe Side Super Chick. So if you have kids, I'm like, that's going to be a whole party. You can
Well, yeah,
use
I mean, like you've literally been a superhero. So like, this is the thing that, yeah,
so,
it's not
yeah.
just about male and female relations. It's not just about romantic relationships. It happens in a lot of places. Like even in my work with kids, if a young person is desperate for a mama figure, and I'm Mama Sara, and I like identify that way, there's two things that can happen. The love I give them can be healing, and they can start to internalize the love in a healthy way, or they can get possessive of me. I
Right.
have a student right now. If I have another student in my office, when she comes by, she's like, who's that? What are they doing here? You're my mom. And it's like, so
Right.
how do I help her in a healthy way, in a kind way, to understand the boundary that needs to be there for me to be a healthy mother figure to her, and to
Right.
her internalizing healthy love. So like if I take that and I apply it to male, female, or romantic relationships, if someone is indicating to me that I am their only source of support and therefore they need to be my only recipient of support,
You do what? You're
I
like
need to start to be real clear and kind, but clear,
clear and kind. Yeah.
and say,
I
listen,
don't, I'm not always kind. I try to be kind. I'm not always kind.
I can say to that kid, I genuinely care about you and want you to do well, and I am here to support you in whatever ways that you need, but you need to understand that I am also that to every student in this building.
Right.
And I say, don't worry, I got plenty of love to give. I got plenty of time to give. And it's a way for me to reinforce that love is infinite.
Right.
Going back to the infinite thing that we talked about, when
Yes.
someone is used to love scarcity, when their love experience is that it is scarce and rare and
Oh,
limited, then they're going to internalize the idea that anytime they get any love, they need to hoard it all. And it's similar with food. Like kids in food insecure places are like, at lunchtime, when if there's extra anything, they're gonna like shove it in their bag and
yes.
stuff like that.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, and it's again going back to the fact that our culture has created scarcity and has created this idea that some people are worthy of everything and others aren't worthy of anything. And everybody fits somewhere along that spectrum.
That's true.
Right? But I mean, like, instead of changing that cultural thing, we keep on blaming ourselves, blaming other people, internalizing shame.
Well, then you get into violence, because these
Yes,
people could turn into violence
yes.
because of the mental health issues, and you're not feeding that or healing that. So then they turn violent. And then of course there's that's a whole
Yeah,
other
but like,
mess.
it's just a reflection of a culture that is fundamentally violent. This is a culture of harm when we are told, these folks over here are worthy of all the good things. You, no, not so much. And then we find something good, that feels connecting, and we want to suck it all in for ourselves. I think that's what happened with this guy and all these other folks who
And
have
I'm
decided.
also, I am also very available,
Right.
but not that way. Like
Well,
I'm
that's
not,
what you need to be clear. I mean, like, that's what I'm saying. Your only
yeah.
responsibility, Angela, is to be clear. Clear is kind, even when it seems like it's making you less available. Your boundaries have to be about, here's the line where I can give everyone that I am presenting this information and these tools to the resources to help them heal. And here is the line where it starts to be about them wanting to use me personally, my body, my spirit, my soul, my everything.
Attention. Yeah.
Yeah. That's got to be clear. It doesn't, like I said, nice and kind are not the same thing. Brene Brown says it all the time. Clear
I like
is
that.
kind. It's
Kind.
not about being polite. It's not about stroking someone's ego. It's about being super clear from and as early as possible. Set expectations early. You and I have had this conversation too about how available you are, right?
It's true. And
not everything needs to be a public conversation.
No.
And not everything needs to be like full exposure of all of yourself. Like I'm not talking about the nudes or any of that, or the boudoir shoot or pricked, because I think it's beautiful what you're talking about doing. You just want to make sure there's boundaries that you're clear on before you start. And if you're clear about those boundaries and you can articulate those boundaries to your audience, then at least you can't feel in any way like you did not make it obvious and plain to everyone watching. This is me expressing something that has been helpful for me. I am fully in my body and it is mine. You are able to enjoy the privilege of seeing what I've produced and created and understanding that these tools are available to you, but me and my body, mine.
Yeah. Except, well, this one guy you can have.
Well, and that's your choice. And then that's personal. I would certainly not expect you to post anything publicly when you are interacting with the person you are choosing to give your body to in a sexual way. I sure hope you don't. I mean,
Wait, what? Back that up.
No, I wouldn't. I said I wouldn't expect you to make any of that public. Like your interactions with this person that you're choosing to be intimate with physically, you don't need to put any of that out there.
No.
And no one should ever expect that.
No. But what I do, and I was very clear with him that I will share my own catharsis moments.
Of course.
I'm not going to share his name or him, but I mean the miraculous moments and super sad moments too. Cause I mean, he's another dude who's not really available. That's like my pattern, but I don't want that right now.
And that's, I mean, it's clear.
Like, I was clear with that. I feel like I'm clear. I'm like, I don't have time literally for a relationship,
Right. You don't want to be, if you don't want to be attached in a way that requires, well, but the bottom line of it is that underneath all of our rational thinking and talking, there is a part of us that is still probably going to want to have this consistent, supportive presence that is also a romantic connection.
Oh yeah.
I feel that, like, I recently reconnected with a friend from high school. He's just recently split from his wife. We have this really great dynamic.
Oh, I love this story.
But he's in no way ready to be in an actual relationship.
And you don't live in the same state.
Oh, that's somebody else. Okay, so
can I got 9,999.
That's somebody else. But like this, just to give you like another thing though, like my most recent relationship was 5 years long and ended 6 weeks ago. So I have to know where I'm at too. I am lonely a little. What I really want is to be held. What I really want is to maybe make out a little bit. I'm not really that hot to get into a sexual relationship with a guy right now because I know how that works for me, how attached I will get, and how I'm not really 100% in the place to do that either because I'm making a lot of decisions right now about
That
where I'm headed. But
exists.
I want companionship. I want company. I want somebody to be like interested. So when someone is like, I have to be aware of the pattern, just like when I was 20 and I got over attached to the guy I married, I have to be aware that, yeah, that pull is there that like, oh, you see me. Oh, we have so much in common. We have so much fun. We're laughing together. There's flirty energy and it's great. It feels great to be in that flirty energy because all that is like attraction, dynamic, push
Mhm.
pull, like feels really
Usually
good.
also the early bit too.
Right. And it is all, and then you're always comparing against that for the rest of the relationship. If you start, if you jump too soon from the exploration of how fun this is. And Esther Perel, who I love, she talks a lot about this too. It's the adventure. It's the call to adventure. Every new
True.
potential relationship feels like, ooh, the butterflies, the tingles, all of that stuff. It's about the call to adventure. It's about this is an unknown thing that I might actually want. And we are right now inundated with unknown things that we don't want. Like what the hell's happening with this
Well,
pandemic? What
go.
the hell's happening with the
Oh,
planet?
that's
What the
true.
hell's happening with the economy? And so
That's
if we
true.
have this interaction that feels like a fun adventure, that feels like fun uncertainty, whew, yeah, we're gonna load a ton of effort and attention in around that. But, I mean, I'm very clear with
I'm
myself about this
leaking.
situation. Well, oh, what's happening? You're
My
paneling?
I'm
Oh,
exploding, Sarah. I'm like spewing.
you can't help it. Things just burst out of you.
Yeah, I'm spewing.
But you know
But
what I'm
I
saying.
will say, I just recently had a date, and not with my cutie pie because I don't date him. That's another story.
That is just for sheets time.
Another story there. I was on a date, and I'm trying a totally new thing of like, because this is an education for me too, of legit. That's why I put that video on my Instagram about what do you want? Like, people, do you really know what we want? If you're just legit, I'm giving you the safest space ever. What do you want? Like, what do you really want? This guy says, he's like, oh wow, he's like, actually, I'm really not into anything sexual right now because he's like, I just want to be held, and I would love a back rub. He's like, somebody to give a back rub. And he's like, and just have a conversation about like food and microgreens. I'm like, that's amazing. I give really good back massages. And I'm such a giver, and I'm not into like having sex. I already am. It was an interesting, like, we would have never had that conversation had you just not been like straight up. So I say that to you because there are people who are like, I'm not men. There are men who are like, I'm not into a whole thing yet, but I really do want to hold and be held. That seems to be the thing.
Yeah.
Unless you're
Well, I mean,
mine who
I
doesn't
think,
want me in there because sometimes I snore.
I definitely snore, but it's like I have a cute snore. My ex-boyfriend, the most recent breakup, he snored so loud. I have like voice memos on my phone called Snorefest 2012, no, not 12, 2020 or whatever. And I would play it back for him until he got a CPAP because he had major apnea. But anyway, yeah. And a lot of people
Always
will end
something.
up in like long married people or long relationship people will end up in separate bedrooms and they'll blame it
Oh
on
yeah.
snoring or they'll blame it on whatever. But I think usually what it actually is that somewhere along the way, when the sex goes, the connection goes. And what I would like, and I tell my young people this all the time, if you want a healthy relationship, if you center sex, it's setting you up to have a much rougher time. Because like understand why sex is so important to us instead of making it important in and of itself. Think about the why. What is it that you get out of a sexual relationship that you don't get anywhere else, right? It's that level of vulnerability and connection and trust. Like you have to trust somebody a lot to willingly give your body, especially if you've been through the things that 8 out of 10 girls and 6 out of 10 boys have been through, which means somebody used their body in a way that they did not consent over the course of their childhood. So when you voluntarily and willingly are giving yourself to someone physically, that's about trust, it's about belonging, it's about connection, it's about vulnerability, it's about
True. I'm
in some
totally,
way
I'm like,
overcoming shame.
Ooh,
And if
that's
it
a
doesn't
big
feel
one.
like that, if it doesn't feel like that, if it feels like I'm doing it because I want to keep them in my life, but I am not getting pleasure, I am not feeling good about what I'm doing, it's triggering shame for me, but I feel like I have to keep the person, then ask why that is too. Because like, why do you want to keep someone in your life who's triggering all your shame? And have you become attached to the shame in a way that you're not willing to really look at? Like, I am not willing to be ashamed of myself anymore. And I think that that has been a big part of why the last couple of relationships that were patterned after my situation with my dad, that's why they're not working. They're not going to work. And I have to be super intentional about not jumping into a similar pattern again with another guy who is clearly operating out of shame and wants me to jump in that pool with him. I will not operate out of shame. I have to embody my power and own it. And whether there are any men who can ever partner with me, I don't know. I don't know. In the meantime, I got a shower nozzle and my Bob, my battery operated boyfriend.
Shower.
Me too. I mean, when we can compartmentalize sex as being just in this venue, in this way, and whatever, like if there's no real examination of all the other connections with our emotional, physical, spiritual health, then yeah, it can just be this thing that's separate over here. This is where sex lives, right?
Yeah, and it's
For
all
me,
connected.
I'm trying to integrate everything. And I've always been really focused on integration and integrity, like those two things, how they're related. Integrity to me is not just doing the right thing. Integrity is about fully embodying who you are in every aspect of your life without all of these walls and barriers and boundaries and saying, like, and I'm not talking about the boundaries we were talking about before. You need boundaries between you,
Yeah.
yourself, and other
Yeah, yeah,
people.
yeah.
But like, I mean, I'm not going to boundary myself with myself.
Right.
Okay. And so when that comes to healthy sex after abuse, it is like you have to just be super self-aware and conscious and dig. Why? Why have I developed this pattern in this area of my life? And it's, you know, I was working on it with my therapist before she died. Seriously, a lot of people in my life have died that I was like
I'm so
getting into this
sorry.
stuff with, but
Oh,
it's,
Jesus.
you know, it's fine. I'm like, apparently my truth is deadly. Like, if you experience my truth, you better watch out.
What?
It's like the arc in Raiders where that when they open up, you know, they see the truth and faces melt. That's what happens.
You're like,
Like,
and you're dead. Oh my God, it's terrible.
I know. Cover your eye. No. Yeah, Sarah's like, yeah, I'm as close to integrated as I've ever been. I know I'm not 100% there yet, but I'm like, that's the goal. So I don't want to get distracted by the temporary sense of, ooh, this person's looking at me in a way that says they want me and I should just like go to that. And he's been deeply, deeply wounded. And my heart is like, let me heal you. And then I'm like, rein it in, Sarah, because it's attraction, but it's not romantic attraction. I mean, it may be someday, who knows, but it's not romantic attraction right now. I have to know, I have to be clear with myself about what form of attraction this is. And what is my role here? My role here is to help him heal, not by becoming his new object of desire, but by being someone who can sit with him through the process he's going through right now and have fun with him and let him know he's desirable, but not having to be like, you're desirable, therefore I desire you and must possess you. I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen while you're talking about your dating stories. I'm going to listen while you're talking about your confusion. I'm going to listen while you're talking about your heartbreak and your kids and all of that. I'm going to be that person, because as soon as we cross the line into another area, it will create a barrier to my being that person. I'm going to be your friend, for real friend, right? That's my role.
You
And
know
I
what did it
don't,
for me? It was like making a decision. For years, I would have sex with somebody I'm in a relationship, and I am not there. I'm not there at all. I have a whole story going on in my head.
mhm,
Speaking of, yesterday I went on a date and I was a little bit early, as I am apt to do. And there was a table of cops,
yeah,
like 5 cops, all ages, run by the one sergeant or whatever who was a little bit older than me. I got for real propositioned by all of them. And
which
he
is a
literally,
nice ego boost. And you're
but
like,
it also freaks me out a little dangerous what I know about the gangs and the cops. And I was like, oof, that is some dangerous shit. So I just played it off. It's like, no, no, thank you. But I'll think about this later when I'm by myself.
right. And that's, but
But
that's part of the messaging that we get. Like, you should be grateful if a guy thinks you're attractive enough for him to like hit on you, proposition you, whatever. But then at what point are we playing
not
out
safe.
false fantasy that we've seen before in other places? And is that about power? Is that about submission? Is that
But
about
yeah.
whatever? But then like the other thing, the flip side of that is like, one time I was at a bar for karaoke. I stepped outside for a cigarette and this car went by and stopped at the light outside of the bar. And some guy yells out the window, "Go inside, you're too fat to be seen." And I was like, there's that. So I'm supposed to be willing to accept not only the guy saying, "Come on, mama, show me what you got," and the guy telling me I'm too fat to be in public. Like there's something twisted
Jesus
about a
Christ.
culture where men feel entitled to do either of those things without the
Yeah, it's
consent.
like ingrained on them. They wouldn't even think, like, you don't say that.
Yeah. Like, I mean,
Wow.
that's just, and
Holy shit.
yeah, to going to like some of the weird cultural things that we've normalized, that men get to catcall and or insult, and women are supposed to take it either way, right? And then the smiling thing, that's another thing that pisses me off. Like,
Oh, the whole why aren't you smiling?
I'll smile when I
Smile.
feel
You're
like it.
pretty.
Just,
Smile.
yeah, like, oh, you're so much prettier when you smile. I don't fucking care what you think. If I'm in deep in thought and I'm like scowling a little bit because I'm thinking about something, like, why is it so threatening to you that I may actually have an interior life that you're
Right.
not the center of? That's what men are trying to do, is recenter themselves all the time. The other night I'm out on the porch having a conversation with some woman that was like really bright, and we were having all these great conversations about all this stuff and talking a little bit about structural inequity and the institutions that keep women and minoritized folks. Well, I use minoritized now, not minorities, because by the way, Black and brown people outnumber us by a lot. But anyway, we're talking, and this guy comes over and he goes, "That's bullshit." Like, just felt entirely entitled to come over and tell me and this woman that we're completely full of shit as we're having a conversation with each other. I'm like, who invited you? You know what I'm saying? Like, if you are curious and you have questions, be curious and have questions. Don't come in and tell me, someone who's, by the way, an expert on power dynamics, that I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right.
Because you're uncomfortable with what we're discussing. If you're uncomfortable with what we're discussing, feel free to walk your ass over there. Right. And that kind of shit just really pisses me off. But I think what we need to be able to do as women, and anyone who's in a vulnerable position socially, is to say, is this thing that's happening about me, about them, or about something else entirely? What are the ways that this is all intersecting? What are the experiences I've had that are making me feel like I'm obligated to give this person my attention or not? Right? I think real power individually comes from saying, this is not mine to deal with. That's a them problem.
Right.
Not in a rude way.
You get me like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Right. Instead of saying, "What the fuck are you talking?"
Angela, be kind.
Well, kindness, again, just but know the difference between kind and polite, because they're not the same thing. Be clear and just say,
That's true.
the only person you can speak for is yourself. I am not comfortable with this. I will not respond to it. I wish you well. and respect my boundary or I will block you. Like, be clear, period. Like,
Right. I don't like the whole
it's
blocking.
not about shaming them or humiliating them or anything else. It's
Right,
just
right, right.
own your piece of it. My piece of it is I do this work. It has value for a lot of people. It's important that I continue doing it. And if you believe on some level that it's supposed to be all about you, I am going to draw a line. I'm going to hold the line, and you will not be participating in any of what we're doing if you cannot respect what it is that I am here for. And it's not to be your baby toy.
Or girlfriend or whatever. True. I like it. That's kind.
Yeah, clear as kind.
But side note, just back up with the whole thoughts in your head, kind of like
Yeah,
thinking later about the 5 police officers. I could have a little fantasy about that. I was for years only in fantasy. Like I could only come if I had fantasy going on. I had to have a good fantasy going before I would eat, and I always initiated sex, always. And so, because I'm horny and and I'm like, I would initiate it, but I would have a clear story first, and it not even be there with that human. And
yeah,
so, but that is something I promised myself, and I have held to it. Like I won't do that anymore. I'm fully
yeah.
present, which means sometimes I don't come
Right. And it's not,
because
and
I'm
it
like
shouldn't be
fully
a race
present.
to orgasm. Sex can be
Yeah.
really, really pleasant and pleasurable without orgasm. And we have just our society is so goal oriented and says if the purpose of sex is to come, then it's a failure if you don't. Well, that's bullshit because there's so many people that because of physical or emotional, spiritual, or whatever other blockages can't. It doesn't mean you can't have pleasurable sex. And it's about we have to redefine pleasure for ourselves and in our relationships with other people. And if you're not in a place to have a conversation about what is pleasurable to you, where you might be having a barrier to pleasure, or whatever other kind of conversation has to go on, then you probably shouldn't be giving your
Start at
body to
step
that person.
one. Start at
Yeah,
step one.
start at step one. But like I think most people are just again, they're ashamed of how their sexual foundations were built, especially
Mhm.
if they were formed at a developmental place and time that, like your brother said in the movie, like you just learned
Mhm.
about sex in a place where you weren't ready for it in a way that was completely outside of a healthy education, right? So you're developing this healthy sex ed, which is really important. And it's clear that there's a whole spectrum of what healthy sex looks like for different people. So I would say it's also a good idea to make sure that part of the disclaimer with Pricked would be these are the things that have worked for me and what I
Oh
am
yeah. This
doing
is
and developing. And there's a whole spectrum of different ways that people can figure out how to have a healthy relationship with their own body in relationship to other people's bodies. Because sex is a physical act, it's also spiritual, emotional, all of the other things. Ideally, like the best sex, and I've heard this from guys too, is like they feel like it's another level mind blowing when they feel a spiritual, emotional, and physical connection with someone, and it's all synced up and aligned and
yeah.
integrated.
I have that with this guy. There's a reason you
Uh,
say, "Oh my God."
right, right,
It
right,
is
right, right.
it is purely it is a like, "Oh, I actually want to have a little visual thing presented for that as a gift
Yeah,
as a part of Pricked." And by the way, I mean, I have to jump on another call,
yeah,
but
me too.
I do want to, as far as Pricked goes, the show is me, is my thesis on myself. Then
Yeah,
I want to have a whole curriculum that's not just me, have all these other experts, have like literally like where we could even have it for teens.
that would be
You know,
amazing. And yeah, I mean, I honestly, the deepest connections that I've formed with the young people that I've worked with have been through my complete openness to their talking about sexual stuff, where so many other people shut them down. And I think when I think about the young people that I have like become really a part of their lives, most of them have disclosed very serious sexual stuff to me, typically about how they were exploited or used in a way that was not healthy for them. And my being able to just sit with that, right? Again, being there for people is not about fixing what's wrong. It's
right.
about
Yeah.
fully accepting whatever happened to them in a way that doesn't say, you know, you should be ashamed, or we need to punish the people that did this to you as the first response. It's just be like, tell me your story.
Well, I think the best gift I give is giving people a space to listen to their own answers.
100%. Yeah. I'm like, when you said that the other day, I was like, yes. And I know, and I've been acknowledging my own answers for a long time now, but it's how long it takes me between knowing the answer and acting on it. That's frustrating sometimes. But, you know, there is something to be said for preparing to transition from what you've been doing to what you're going to do.
Mhm.
And that's a series of decisions, a series of questions and answers with yourself, right? And knowing that maybe on a day where I am feeling particularly drained and exhausted, that the answer that comes up may not be complete. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, I may have an answer which says, I don't want to do this anymore. That's not the same as having an answer that says, I know what I want to do next. Right. But that's the first step usually. Well, the first step is like with the imposter syndrome thing I was saying. When someone realizes that the place they thought they wanted to be is not the place they want to be, that's not them feeling like an imposter. That's their answer showing up.
Mhm.
This is not what I want. That's the
Yeah.
first step to realizing what you actually do. And
Like
then,
you saying with your dad, I thought always I was attracted to dad.
yeah,
Like wanting dad and wanting that kind of dominant, controlling dude. I'm like, I had to experience that repeatedly.
right,
Until you're like, wait, are you really listening to yourself? I don't even like this person.
right. Well, and the
You
bottom
know?
line is like what we're looking for is not even like the domination piece of it. What you're looking for is the transformation from that person that was dominating and mistreated
Mhm.
you and used their power in a negative way that had impacts on you. You want to find someone similar to that and switch them and love them
And then
into
but I don't.
transformation.
I don't need to
Right.
do that.
Yeah.
I realize like, oh
It's
yeah,
like, that's not
don't
yours to
need to do
hold,
that.
not ours to hold. It
I'm
is not
cool,
our
man.
job to heal the abusers in the world, but it is our job to not empower them. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm realizing more
Oh,
and
you
more,
said it.
the best way to get to the world we want is to stop propping up the world we don't. And we're still doing it on some level when we continue to center that power imbalance and the power abuses. When we center those things, instead of creating a new world over here, or at least simultaneously creating a new world over here, we're continuing to give the power to that thing that we want to end. So
Yeah, no shit.
in all of these relationship dynamics, I think we just need to be honest with ourselves. Am I centering the thing that I actually don't want? If I'm centering the thing I don't want, I am part of the problem. I'm complicit. So now the goal is
Boundaries.
identify what you actually want, center that, and
Yeah,
then
and what the fuck do
boundary
you want?
everything else. Right. It doesn't mean that you have to be nasty or reject people or pretend they don't exist or exploit or objectify them in the same ways we've been exploited and
Right,
objectified.
right.
What it says is, I refuse to engage in exploitation or objectification, period, of me or anyone else. Now I'm going to have thoughtful, considered, integrated experiences out of a conscious awareness of what I want and out of full respect for the dignity of the person I'm engaging with.
Here, here. See what I
Here,
said?
here.
What did I say? I'm gonna say what she said.
What she said. Oh, and I just look like this.
What she
My
said.
finger up my nose.
Wherever you show up. I don't know where you're gonna
Yeah.
be over there.
And by the way, yeah, we're all traveling a different part of the path right now, just like you said the other day too. It's important to know where you are and where you're going and where you're going to end up. All of that stuff is about each individual choice we make. And it's not, and we do have an understanding that the choices other people make can impact that. So it's not all on us by ourselves. We have a community. If you don't have a community, create one, but don't do it in a, Angela Shelton's going to be my savior because,
Log on. You have 24/7 access.
Except you don't.
The videos. The videos.
I know, to videos, exactly, and to healing work and workbooks and all of that stuff. So yeah, you and I mean, we can definitely talk more at some point about ways to draw clearer lines for yourself to protect a little bit more. It's
Oh,
not
we're
about,
gonna.
yeah, it's not
I
about
I have a
armoring up. It's
I
not
have
about
some.
not being yourself and not being available. It's about making clear for yourself what's workable within that, on a practical sense, and to create some structure around it. I
I
love
love
you so much.
it. Jinx, buy me a Coke.
Thanks, owe me Coke.
Bye.
I love you.